Okay, RPG Rules tutorial number 3 here. We're going to have a look into the wonderful world of buffs now. So I've restored Rainbow Guy to human form, and we can use our powers as before. Now, let's have a look at that violet ray again. With the violet ray, he's getting 50% to all damage and plus 1 hit points per second. He gets a little buff, the violet aura, on him, which we set up in here. The buff is probably one of the most versatile status effects we've got, in that it basically just changes sort of statistics on the character. You know, it makes them do more damage, take less damage, take more damage, run faster, fly. Whole number of things like that. If I open up this list here, you can see basically all the different stats you're allowed to modify in buffs currently, and these are all from a enum in the code. So what I thought I'd do is show you some of the tools we've got for working with buffs. Now I've selected myself, press P, brings up this little window and you can go pick, so we're picking Rainbow Guy now. Now we're currently looking at his thoughts, which are empty because he's a player controlled character, but if we click on stats we can see we've got a whole number of different stats there. He's got a health of 200, energy of 100, heavy lifting of 10, you have a normal strength, health regen is 1 now, crushing damage, piercing damage, toxic damage, etc. are all 50. So that's because of this plus 50% to all damage that he's got. You know, internally it's modifying about 15 different values there. If we turn the violet ray off, they all disappear from his database, and we're just left with health, energy, battery, which is a peculiar thing for sort of characters who are powered by a battery that can run out, and heavy lifting. Yeah, but we turn the violet aura back on, and all these stats appear here. And, you know, how can we demonstrate this nicely? His indigo ray, do a few teleport punches, doing 14 damage, 15 damage there. If we turn this off, that's only doing 6, 8, 6 damage, doing less damage. Maybe less than 50%, and you can see his energy adjusting there in the debug window. So, let's stop playing and have a look at this violet aura and see what else we can get it to do. You know, a damage buff and health regen, it's okay. In fact, what we're going to do is we're going to approach this scientifically. So we're going to take the red ray. Yeah, take the red ray, and we're going to get it to do a flat 10 damage at all times. We'll take the flames off because they're going to be distracting. We'll just set that to 0. So the red ray now just does 10 damage flat out. And we will get the robot. No, we'll just do with Rainbow Guy first. So his red ray is now going to do 10 damage. 10. 10. Turn on the indigo ray, that gives us plus 50% damage, it should do 15 now. Oh yes it does. 22, that was a critical, 50% extra. We'll cover that in a minute. Okay, so we can now give the robot a buff. Let's make a new buff. RPGRules status buff. And we're just going to call this test dummy buff. We'll give it an icon, give it a little gear wheel, the enhancement basic one, make it, yeah, leave it red, no effects, and we'll make the robot resistant to our damage. So we're going to give it a resistance of 100 to, let's say, all damage types. Now we just need to find that robot in scene view. There he is. And he's got passive powers. He already has a passive buff. He's got 2 versions of inanimate, funnily enough. and we'll give him that test dummy buff there. So inanimate's a buff. If we look at that, that gives him defense minus 100 to all physical attacks. We'll see why that is in a minute. So we've now given the robot plus 100% resistance to our attacks. If we use the red ray, it's now doing, oh, it missed, never happens, 5 damage. Why is that? That's due to the formula we use. I'll just bring that up. Documentation, buffs. So if we go to the documentation for buffs, we have the buff formula here. And that says when we've got a buff of 100 resistance buff, the damage we do is 1 divided by 1 minus 100 over 100, so it's half damage. You can think of that as minus 100% as being like a divider of 2. Minus 200% means you do a third of damage, and so on and so on. This is slightly counterintuitive, but I like it because it means you can never reach doing 0 damage. You never become 100% resistant to anything. So it's only doing 5 damage to him now. If we boost ourselves, it'll do, oh, it's a critical, about 7 damage. 5 plus 50% is about 7. Yeah, so we could counter that with the red ray. Let's go to the red ray. That's in assets, character. Actually, let's use the history window because we had the red ray open. Yep. Characters, rainbow guy. We will create a little buff here. RPGRules status buff called weaken. And it's going to do one effect. It's going to apply resistance, but minus 50% resistance to all damage types every time it hits. And we're going to put that on the red ray. So where's the effects? There they are. Size 1. Drop weaken as a side effect on the red ray. We'll just check that weaken had an icon. No, it didn't. Give it the buff icon and make it red because it's on the red ray. So when we run now, every time we hit with the red ray, it should lower the robot's resistance to damage, so it should take more and more damage with each hit. 5, 6, 10, 10. Yeah, and the red ray, that's right, only puts the status on for 5 seconds currently. So we'll make it last 20 seconds so we can really stack it up. And we should find that we're doing increasingly more and more damage. Five, 6. You can see we've got 4 stacks, minus 200% to resistance now. So we're doing 20 damage, that's double damage, doing triple damage now, 30, 35, and we've sort of leveled out, doing about 35 damage with 10 stacks there. Yeah, so that's, and if we have a look at the robot here, pick him and look at his stats, we can see his crushing resistance is going way into the negative. He has these crushing defense and piercing defense minus 100, by the way. That comes from his inanimate buff, which is invisible. It doesn't have a little status effect. And that was purely so that you don't miss when you're trying to hit the inanimate test dummy all the time. It makes it easier for him to hit. So yeah, that's one of the sort of simplest and in some ways driest ways of demonstrating buffs, is to have damage buffs and resistance buffs which change the amount of damage a character does. Let's go into the violet array and see what else we can do. The violet aura, sorry. So it currently gives us some health regen and some damage. Here's a fairly obvious one. What if we give ourselves flight of 100% with the violet aura? That now means that press the violet aura and we're flying. Flying 100% flight is equivalent to normal walking speed. If I sort of hover over the ground, turn it off, turn it back on again, you can see I'm not really speeding up that much. I'm still hovering vertically all the time. If we make that 200% flight speed and try again, that'll give us sort of, you know, more superheroic flight in a way. Woohoo! Yep, now we're flying. Got a strange back foot there. But yeah, we're flying twice as fast as normal. Not bad. And it doesn't stop there with movement, of course. Whoops. Press 7 and we'll get out of there. We could decide that instead of granting us flight, the purple ray grants us increased speed and jumping. So say 100 jump and 100 speed. Let's jump there. Will now make us sort of super athletic when we're using this ray. Woohoo! Yep, that's pretty cool. And turn it off, and we go back to normal speed. That's quite appreciably noticeable there. Yep. So with this list of different buff things that we have, the first 4 are special. Damage just changes how much damage you do. Resistance reduces the amount of damage coming in by a percentage. Reduction is like -5, just taken off the damage straight away, so that small attacks don't hurt you at all. And defense makes you harder to hit. And all of them rely on the damage types you select in here. So you could say that, you know, you have, instead of just doing extra damage of all types, it could just be do extra energy damage, so only your energy damage powers get boosted. We could make it that it's exothermic, which is a list of energy, fire, radiation, light, anything that's sort of giving out energy, as opposed to endothermic, which is like cold, darkness, negative energy and so on. Yeah, that sort of thing. Chemical is acid, burn and toxic, I think. We've got some compound types in there. And, you know, the powers become more expensive in this point system the more damage types they protect against. Yeah. So, any other good ones I can demonstrate just now? We do have ones like magic skill, technology skill, computer skill, which are used for operating interactables and crafting, because this game isn't all about combat. Let's have a look at heavy lifting. Say we decide the violet aura is a kind of anti-gravity aura, and that gives us heavy lifting boosted by 50. Yep. So that enables us to pick up and throw objects. Heavy lifting, as the name suggests. Normally that's controlled by your strength stat, but you could say that, like, you know, Rainbow Guide's not particularly strong, but is able to generate this anti-gravity aura. So now I can pick up a small rock, no worries, and throw it across the entire map at that robot there. Pick up a medium rock, don't mind if I do. And can I throw it all the way there? Yeah, no problem. Take that. Pick up a heavy rock. Oh, look at the slowness of that animation. That rock actually requires a strength of 60 to throw. which is exactly what he's got at the moment, plus 50% heavy lifting. So if he tries to throw that, ooh, doesn't go very far. Yeah. So we've, even with his 100% speed boost, we're struggling there. So yeah, that's sort of a quick introduction to buffs. Basically they have this big list of stats which are visible. If you pick a character and go to the stats, you can see all their stats in the database there. You can see the speed and jump of 100, all the damage ones are 50, heavy lifting's at 60 now, and so on and so on, thanks to this buff that he's got on him. Yeah, so I'll just talk through a couple of examples with buffs now, bring up some other characters. Right, first of all I'm going to have a look on how I've used buffs. So in the Universe Gun folder, Assets, RPG Rules, Universe Gun, Characters, Moon Girl. Put Moon Girl in the player spawn. Right. So she has got photokinesis powers. She can create clouds of darkness, like Shadow Anchor is one of her main powers. That creates this aura with a shadowed buff, and we'll have a look at that. So when someone's in a cloud of darkness, what I wanted to happen is not that the darkness powers do damage, but they obscure people's vision. The enemies can't shoot you because they're inaccurate, wildly inaccurate, and they also shoot each other by accident. So I gave them accuracy of minus 20%, so they have a 20% less chance to hit you. I gave them perception of minus 40%, so you can sneak up on them before they see you. And I gave them an enrage of 200%. Enrage is a status effect type of thing that makes, when it gets over 100, the AIs will start targeting random enemies. Now what I found was when the enraged AIs were all missing each other because of this accuracy penalty they had, so I gave them a big defense penalty as well, so that they are easier to hit. They have a harder time of hitting, so they hit each other with, fairly regularly, but they have a hard time hitting you and you have an easy time hitting them. So that was Clouds of Darkness, which look like this. So if I put the Shadow Anchor on that robot there, just fly. This is a toggle power that's acting on him. We can see he's got shadowed there, and if we pick him and look at his stats, got a huge list there. Because he's got all these resistance ones we put on him, but he's got like piercing defense minus 120. Yeah, that's a combination of inanimate and the shadowed ones, and his accuracy is quite low. Maybe the best way to demonstrate this is to close that window and actually get some live enemies to fight. Here we go. So we'll just pick some enemies who fight back, spawn some space cops over there, and let's shadow them. Yep, so now I should be able to run around with fairly good impunity and beat them up while they sort of shoot each other. Running out of energy though, supporting this shadowed cloud. Yeah, you can see these two guys are shooting each other in the clouds of darkness there. I have toned down the visuals on these darkness clouds so they're not too egregious. You can still see the enemies inside them. Yeah, so that was buff example number 1. Have a look at Moon Girl and the photokinesis power set and how it's set up shadowed to work as sort of darkness clouds that interfere with the enemy's ability to fight. Going into Universe Gun characters again, we've got little Xeno here. I'll just drag him into the player spawn. There we go, and see what he does. Right, so he's got growth. What sort of buffs should you give someone who's got a growth? Where's his punch? Mass punch. There we go. Boom. While he's grown, let's just have a look at it. Plus 100% to physical damage, so he'll do crushing and piercing damage. Will be increased, but not his not his energy damage or anything. 50% to speed because his legs are longer. 100% to physical resistance, and 200% to mass. So he's harder to knock back, and he takes less damage from physical attacks, but not from, say, burning or psychic attacks or whatever. On the other hand, he can also shrink. And the visual effects for these, by the way, are just a size changer component I have, which just scales the model up and down. So when he's shrunk, he's got 30% to corporal defense, in other words 30% dodge chance to anything except psychic or magic, plus 100 to jump. Woohoo, 'cause it doesn't weigh much. Level 1 intangible. Don't know if I can demonstrate that, but that basically allows him to run through fences or semi-permeable material. Takes more knockback, and plus 100% to invisibility. So he can run up to this gun robot here, and they can't see him at all. Let's give it a punch. Boom. Right, now I've got his attention. Now he can see me, and he is actually shooting at me. But if I get out of range, he should soon forget that I was ever there, and sort of go back to idle. Right, if I turn on density as well, this gives me 50% root, 2% to heavy lifting, 100% to mass. I can now, boom, also get knockback on my attacks. Right, if I turn off shrinking, you'll see this better. He's increased his density, so it's now leaving cracks in the floor. I'll get over onto the earth to do that. Maybe turn density off some faster. Turn it back on. Boom, boom, boom. So heavy is leaving cracks in the floor. Thanks to RPGRules footsteps system. But yeah, the point here is sort of when you're looking to have a power that changes the way a character behaves or changes the way other characters behave, you can often get away with doing a lot of it with a buff. Yeah, the ones that we're using here with Xeno are Shrink, which has got defense bonus, jump bonus, intangibility, and so on. Growing, where you get extra damage, extra speed, more resistance, and harder to knock back. And then Density has is a bit of a mixed bag. Where's that? Increased mass. 50% root means he's closer to actually getting rooted. Rooted attacks have an easier time of stopping him moving. Heavy lifting of 2, that should probably be higher. Would enable him to go and pick up big objects. Mass makes him harder to knock back. Speed minus 150 makes him walk more slowly. Jump minus 200 means he can't jump at all in heavy form. He now has to turn that off. And stun minus 2, that should be minus 200 now, this is an old one, means it's very hard to stun. You know, because it's sort of super dense at the time. Yep. So that is a brief tour of buffs. The documentation covers all the stats in detail here as to what each of them do. I will note, by the way, that like in the one I showed you with Moon Girl, the shadowed one, we've actually got Enrage in there, which is a mez effect. I could have put that together as a mez now. There's a little bit of redundancy in there, because I found whenever I wanted to make a hold or a mez or a confuse or something like that, it was a little bit annoying having to make a buff and find it in the list. So I made these mez powers which we saw earlier with the blue ray, I think. Blue ray paralysis, which is the hold of 100%. You could have set this up as a buff, but I only do that now. These are sort of simpler. I only do that now for the ones like Shadowed, where you apply other effects as well as the mez. Yep, and speaking of mezes, you can also have a mez with a strength of less than 100. That just means you need multiple applications to actually root or hold the target, which is an idea I want to play around with later. Yeah, so that's a quick introduction to buffs, which is the first status effect and one of the most complicated ones. Next tutorial on statuses, I'll just go through a few of the other ones fairly quickly and show you how they work.